Hello and welcome to Castle News. I'm Chris P. Bacon.
And I'm Anchovy. Today, Liberals propose changes on mandatory minimums in drug-related offenses.
Are they good? Are they bad? Let's find out. Mandatory sentences require offenders spend a predefined term for certain crimes, mostly violent and serious offenses, in this case, drug offenses.
Current Liberal proposal wishes to remove mandatory minimum sentences in order to put justice back into the hands of judges. To help us understand exactly what these mandatory minimums are, we have brought in legal expert Professor Birkenstock to explain the history of how these minimums came to be. Welcome, Professor.
Tell us about it. These minimums were first put in place in 2012 by the Conservative government under the Safe Streets and Communities Act. The legislation aimed at adding mandatory minimums for trafficking offenses, specifically when they had an aggravating factor, for example, possession of a weapon, or if you're trafficking for a criminal organization. Minimums like this have been challenged in the past. Most notably in 1987, in the case of Regina v. Smith, where the accused is subject to a 7-year mandatory minimum for importing or exporting a controlled substance. The Supreme Court in that case decided that the minimum was cruel and unusual punishment and therefore violated the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Since then, several other Supreme Court cases have gone through and they've arrived at similar judgments. Over time, two main questions have become clear that every judge must ask in a case where a mandatory minimum is involved. The first question is that mandatory minimum suitable for that offender and his situation? And they have to take into account the offender's past, valid alternatives, and other things in that nature. The judge also needs to consider a potential offender, whereas if they receive the same sentence, it would be considered cruel and unusual punishment under the Charter of Rights.
Thank you, Professor, for that valuable insight.
Thank you, Chris.
Our own investigative reporter, Barb D. Wire, hit the streets to find out how this affects you, the people.
This is Joe. Joe is about to get arrested for possessing for the purpose of trafficking 10 grams of heroin. Due to mandatory minimums for having this amount and in possession of a weapon, Joe is going to face a sentence of 1 year in prison. Mandatory minimums are about to uproot Joe's life in many different ways. He will lose his place in social housing, his job, and possibly future endeavors. The current Liberal government has promised action on mandatory minimums. Instead of passing a bill, they have elected to send out a survey. Mandatory minimums have been controversial for a long time, and urgent change is in need.
So, Joe, how long have you been out here on the street?
Been out here since I was I want to say 16,
Okay.
and on and off the streets, since then.
Okay. And what led you to using drugs?
To be honest, it's my childhood. My dad would use the drugs a lot, and come home, abuse my mom, and drugs would be all over the house. So I had easy access to them, so I'd use them with my friends and stuff like that.
So, sorry, this is quite a busy street. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, absolutely.
So, what's been one of the biggest problems then in terms of accessing help?
Just I don't even know, just kind of talking to people, just going up to, it's what you look like, right? You got to go up to them, and you don't have any clothes, right? So they kind of disregard you, kind of thing. So it's just trying to find the help is a little bit difficult, but you have the occasion where people do come and let you in and kind of take care of you.
Okay. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Hit?
No, thank you. I'm trying to cut down.
Okay.
Our wonderful reporter also set out on the streets to talk to professionals about the current issue. Take it away, Barb.
Hello. It's October in Victoria. Things are starting to get a little bit cold. It's chilly. You can feel the crispness in the air. It's easy if you're in your nice warm house, but for some people, homelessness and substance misuse has a great effect on their lives. People are living on the street, affected by substance misuse and poverty.
Hey, Joe, what are you doing? What's that?
Nothing.
Come on, come stand up, man. Take that blanket off. What's this? Give it to me. Drugs? Doing drugs again? You just got out.
No, man.
Weren't you living somewhere? Come on, put your hands up against the wall.
I don't got nothing, officer.
You don't got nothing. What's this? What's
Nothing.
this?
Nothing.
What's this, eh?
You planted that on me.
I planted it on you, eh? What's in this one?
Nothing.
You got a weapon out here?
I gotta protect myself, officer.
I understand that, but you're not allowed weapons. You know that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to
Man.
take you in, bud.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Hi. My name is. I'm here with the news.
Oh yeah, that Royal Roads news.
I'm here with the Royal Roads News, and I'd like to ask you a
This
few
is-
questions here.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you need?
What's
This
going
is
on here?
ridiculous.
Well, Joe here, he's what we call frequent flyer.
Okay.
We just sent him back to prison a while ago for using and having weapons out here.
Okay.
Like with this, like I know it's addictions and stuff like that, but there's not much we can do. Our hands are
Not
pretty
addicted.
tied. Just ignore him. All right, my hands are pretty tied. Like usually, I would love to just take him to a rehab center and get him the help he needs. But if I find a weapon on him, I gotta take him in, charge him. Why you got a weapon?
I need to protect myself out here, man.
What kind of weapon? I don't see a weapon.
It's he had this folding
Planted
knife
that
on
on
him.
me.
I didn't plant it on him. You saw, but as you can see, he could do some damage if he really wants to.
Okay. So now what's going to happen next?
Well, he's going to get brought in, charged. He's going to be put in front of the judge. Unfortunately, with the current system, judge is just going to have to do a mandatory sentence and send him away for a couple of years,
Okay.
just because of the weapon.
What is the root cause of this?
The cause of this is probably the mandatory sentencing because this guy goes in front of the judge. The judge sends him to jail. He gets a stigma where he can't get a job. People just see him as a
Just need to
convict.
get high.
Just shut up and stay
I
against
just-
the wall, man.
It's not.
Joe, it's all right. It's all right. We'll deal with it later. So with this our discretion's basically taken out of our hands. We
Yeah.
can't take him to a center. We find a weapon. We gotta take him in. I gotta go. Come here, Joe.
I'm outside Royal Housing Unit with Brad leading front. Hi, Brad. Thank you for taking the time.
No problem.
I'm not sure if you've heard, but Joe Laws, he's recently been rearrested. And we understand that you were his supporter.
Yeah, that's really tough. I heard about that. Guys like Joe have a tough go. They have a lot to lose when they go into the incarceration system, and it's just unfortunate that realities of street life, carrying a weapon to protect yourself, and addictions, they're hard to overcome, and when you get put into prison, it puts a lot more at risk than the system takes into account. Like housing, getting places like this, even if it doesn't necessarily look like the nicest place, it's difficult. There's a lot of homeless, there's wait lists, and once you're in and out of the system, it's even harder. So you lose your housing. Joe has a bunch of his possessions in there, and if he can't find anyone to take care of them, then he's going to lose all of his worldly possessions too. And probably the biggest loss is all of the community support. There's a lot of ACT teams, they're called, in town. It's the Assertive Community Treatment, and they just don't have the same kind of options in the provincial system. So he'll go in, and they do the job upgrading and addiction support. They do the counseling, and they usually try to help with depression and mental illness. And in the provincial system, unfortunately, it's less than 2 years, and there's not adequate funding for the same kind of treatment options on the inside of the incarceration system.
So sorry,
yeah.
let me see if I'm understanding this. So with this kind of a sentence, with an under 2-year minimum, he won't be going to a federally funded prison system, but he'll be going to a provincially funded unit?
Yeah, that's correct. Anything under 2 years goes provincial, and the nature of provincial, because there's a lot of mandatory minimums and short-term sentences, there's more overpopulation, there's less funding, and so there's less treatments. And I don't think that's necessarily taken into account when sentencing is given out, that 1 year might seem minor on the surface, but once you take into the account what you lose on the outside and the treatment that you don't get when you are inside, it's a lot harsher than it seems.
So, what kind of an impact will being sentenced have on Joe's ability to rehabilitate?
Oh, long term, unfortunately. Obviously there's always a chance that he'll bounce back, but we find that most of the time it's adverse conditions, and he'd be set back a long way.
So, in your opinion, what would be a better model for treatment?
Well, there's lots of alternative measures that somebody can do, whether that's reparations or there's apology letters if there's a victim concerned. In this case, probably community service, but anything that doesn't disconnect him from his treatment team is a better option.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you.
Back
Rhodes University with Dr. Perry Winkle, who is a professor in criminology with her doctorate in psychology. She's here to give us a little bit of information and a bit of background. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I am a psychologist who specializes on the impacts incarceration can have on the mental health of an individual. Over the years, my research has proven that individuals who have suffered the pains of incarceration will frequently develop a psychological disorder or other forms of personal pathology. The term institutionalization is used to describe the process by which inmates are shaped and transformed by the institutional environment in which they live. The adaptation to incarceration is almost always problematic and can create habits of thinking and acting that can be dysfunctional for individuals when it comes to being released back into society. It is very rare that people are not affected or unchanged by incarceration. The individuals experience a completely different way of living where they're deprived of their norms and forced to learn a completely different way of life. Offenders gradually become more accustomed to the restrictions that institutional life imposes. In the harsh and dangerous correctional environments, in order to survive, these inmates develop reflexes which become increasingly natural and second nature to the degree where it's internalized. The more extreme environments that an prison entails, the more severe a psychological disorder will impact the life of the individual. Which is why it is so important for mandatory minimums to be revoked, because imprisonment is super serious and has major consequences and should not be overlooked. Mandatory minimums are causing more damage than they are causing justice.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Of course, thank you for having me.
And this crime doesn't just affect people with mental health issues or substance misuse. Here we have a single mother with 2 children, been living on the street for months. She's been stealing food. And if she gets caught with a weapon, she too will be sentenced. Mandatory minimums don't justify people. So, how long have you been in the berries? It's a hard life. Back to you.
So, Anne, it seems like it's a little bit more complicated than just throwing somebody in jail. Biopsychosocial really needs to be taken in, and judges can't really take in mitigating circumstances when sentencing someone.
I agree with that, Chris. I agree the removal of judicial discretion can create an unjust system.
It would seem so.
Thank you for watching.
Stay crisp, Rhodes.